A basketball hero around here is treated like a god. I mean, how can you ever find out what he could really do? I don't want this to be the high point of his life. I've seen them, the real sad ones. They sit around the rest of their lives talking about the glory days when they were 17 years old.
You know, most people would kill to be treated like a god just for a few moments.
Welcome to Keeping the Nostalgia Alive, the Indiana Basketball Memory Show. I am your host, Billy Powell. You can go to Keeping the Nostalgia Alive, that's all one word, keepingthenostalgiaalive.podbean.com, and you can listen to over 160 episodes of people from the Hoosier Hardwood. I mean, Kent Benson, Rick Mount, Gene Cady. Lagodi is having their 50th anniversary of their 1971 Final Four team that played in Indianapolis at Butler Fieldhouse. Just go over there to keepingthenostalgiaalive.podbean.com, and you can download any of those and listen at your leisure or just listen at the site. I also have a couple of pages that are just basketball related with Indiana, all Indiana basketball, and that's Indiana Basketball Memories and Hoosier Hysteria on Facebook. I think if you go to Indiana Basketball Memories or Hoosier Hysteria, you'll also see that I have several other pages that I've kind of delved out to just with my passion for the game of basketball. With all that being said, once I graduated from Broad Ripple in 1986, I got an academic scholarship to go to Indiana State University. And, you know, in 86, it's 7 years beyond Larry Bird. And I should have gotten into the basketball program, but I didn't. Like I was telling my guest before I started the show that, you know, we were poorer than dirt. And, you know, I had to get in there and get in 4 years and get out just because based upon our financial situation. So it was nice to get the academic scholarship. But I think within the first couple of days of my freshman year there at Indiana State, 86 to 87, we were kind of playing basketball, and we lived in Cromwell Hall, and we came across Ron Cheatham. And he lived on the 4th floor there in Cromwell, and we were on the 10th floor, me and Michael Ball, who had played basketball at South Vermilion High School, and they had won a sectional before he came to Indiana State. And, you know, I thought college basketball players were kind of offsetting or kind of cocky or kind of rude, and come to find out Ron Cheatham wasn't that persona. So he was a really good guy, even though he was a scholarship athlete at Indiana State University, and he probably didn't know what he was getting into either. So today we're talking to him, and he lives in the hotbed of Indiana high school basketball, and that's Martinsville, and, you know, home of the Martinsville Artesians, and you know, John Wooden and Branch McCracken lived a farm away, I think, in that area. But I thank Ron for his time and helping to share and help keep the nostalgia alive. And Ron Cheatham, thanks for joining us.
Billy, thanks for having me, and thanks for the kind words in the introduction.
Yeah, Ron, tell everybody about where you were born and raised. Was it Paris, Illinois? And also within that same question, you know, tell us a little bit about your family. Were your family a group of athletes? Did you have brothers and sisters? And tell us a little bit about your mom and dad.
Yeah, I grew up in Paris, Illinois. I grew up as a farm kid. And I've got one sister who's a couple years older than me. But so yeah, it's that proverbial growing up in the rural setting in Paris, Illinois. Got introduced to basketball in the 4th grade, and was kind of that tall, gangly kid that was a pretty good athlete. But kind of like you, fell in love with the game at an early age, and had some great coaches to kind of whet the appetite of what could be, but mom and dad, they still live on the farm that I grew up on, and they're doing well, and we see them. They come over probably once a month, once every 2 or 3 weeks. I've got some kids that are in sports, so they come over to watch the boys, and see them quite often.
You know, you and I are about the same age, if not the same age, and you know, what Did you follow Indiana State University when Larry Bird was there? Was that when you were following Larry Bird or heard about Larry Bird? Did you think that you wanted to eventually play basketball at Indiana State University, or what were some of your favorite colleges or professional teams that you followed as a youngster?
Yeah, you know, a huge Larry Bird fan, and that was the primary reason I wanted to go to Indiana State. You know, it was a Division I school close to home, and Larry was an idol of mine. So that was, you know, as a senior, junior, senior in high school, that was kind of the height of the Bird era and Magic Johnson and all that. So yeah, that was the primary reason that I decided to go to Indiana State.
And tell us a little bit about what high school basketball was like in Paris, Illinois, compared to what you came to find out high school basketball was like in Indiana.
Well, you know, Paris has a long tradition of basketball right there in Paris, in the Ernie Evelyn gym. So, you know, we like Rick Gosnell, he had played for Paris and went on to play college, and he was one of my coaches in high school that helped me kind of see the vision of what could be. But it's so different than what it is today. You know, this was prior to AAU, so, you know, we get together as a team once or twice a week in the summer and play other school teams. But it was for sure a notch down from what Indiana basketball is. In fact, that's one of the reasons I think I gravitated to live and make my home in Indiana was, you know, basketball is still a big part of my life. I love it. You know, I've got two kids, two boys that play, and I'll enjoy going to practice and watching them sometimes. They're like, Dad, why do you like to go to practice? I said, well, obviously it's one, I like to watch you play, but, you know, even running some of these mundane drills that you see going on in high school, I love watching it and kind of picking apart the details of what a kid's doing right and what a kid's not doing right. But that's real enjoyment to me. I know I'm probably a little messed up with that enjoyment, but I do like watching the game.
You know, the only reason that some of us went over the border into Illinois was at that point in time in Indiana didn't have scratch-offs, and you go buy scratch-off tickets over in Illinois.
Yeah.
So what was it, you know, I've interviewed A.J. Guyton, and he's told me a little bit about how Illinois high school basketball is set up, but, you know, Indiana high school basketball had one true state champion all the way up until 1997. What was your guys' playoff system like?
You know, a two-tier system, so there was single A and double A. In Paris, we were in the double A bracket, so the large school. So, you know, we won our regional, and in Illinois it's regional and in sectional, and in Indiana it's the opposite. But my junior and senior year, we won our regional championship over Charleston each year. Junior year, we won on a last-second shot by David Thompson. And then the senior year we won, I don't know, about 8 or 10 points. But so we were competitive. But once you get into the upper levels, you would compete against the Chicago teams or East St. Louis teams, and you know, that'd be like a 6A school here in Indiana, 5A school competing against. So it was a two-tier system, but you've got the Chicago teams, the East St. Louis teams, that usually dominated when it came to tournament time.
And Ron, so did you guys have a basketball hoop at the house? Is that where you kind of honed your jump shot and stuff like that?
Yeah. In fact, we were over to my folks last weekend, and I was telling one of the kids that this is where the basketball hoop stood. It was one of those half moon-shaped backboards. I can still remember my dad putting it up, and had gravel, so you know, the dribbling was not the perfect situation, but yeah, spent hours out there, hours in the hot summer. I can remember playing, shoveling it off with when it snowed, and wearing gloves that had the fingers cut out, and spent hours out there from, you know, 6th grade through the high school. Once I started driving, I could make my way into town and find a gym. But growing up, that's where I spent a lot of the time.
You know, we always thought that you had just a perfect-looking jump shot. Is that something that you just worked on as a youngster before getting to high school, or was it honed once you got into high school, or did someone help you out with that, or was it just on your own?
You know, it was various coaches, but you know, the whole 3-point shooting hadn't really come into play. But you know, by the time I got in college, I think that was the first year. But you know, it was just tweaking a little bit here and there. I wouldn't say I'm a perfectionist, but that was in my mind. The jump shot was something that I really wanted to perfect, and I would say probably between my freshman and sophomore years in high school is when I kind of perfected that. You know, as a sophomore, I was starting varsity, and I think we had played 2 or 3 games into the year and ended up breaking my ankle and set out the rest of the year. And I think that's when I really focused in on the details of the shot and tried to perfect it to what it became.
Did you guys ever meander over to Terre Haute while you were before high school, or even while you were in high school, to watch basketball games at the Holman Center?
You know, no, we really didn't. We played a few, I think, South Vermilion and maybe West Vigo in high school, but really didn't get a taste of Indiana basketball, what it was all about until living in Indiana. You know, you got some of it in college, but and I've lived in Minnesota and Oregon, and we ended up back here in Indiana. But you know, the kids, when your kids are involved with sports, you kind of get that whole flavor of what Indiana basketball is about. So no, growing up in Illinois, I really didn't have an appreciation of Indiana basketball. One of my best friends was a big Bobby Knight fan, and that's, I can still remember. I kind of liked the Illini growing up, but the more I found out about Bobby Knight, the Indiana basketball, the hard nose, you know, that whole legendary system, the more I became kind of the mecca of basketball and to move to Indiana.
And you had the Lou-Doo there at Illinois at that time, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah, and, you know, a lot of those kids at that time came out of Chicago, so, you know, I don't remember what the name of it was, but with Kenny Battle and those guys, that was a phenomenal time to watch Illinois play.
Ron, when did you start to get interest in your basketball abilities for college?
You know, I would say, you know, when I broke my ankle, you know, I look back on my time, and that was, you know, it was a struggle, and it really fueled the fire for me to get better. I felt I missed out on a year, so that time between the sophomore year and junior year, I turned up the heat as far as the amount of time I spent in the gym and the workouts and things like that. I was probably 6'2" as a sophomore, 6'2", 6'3", so I knew there was some opportunity there. I just wanted to see how far I could take it.
And
so junior year, I kind of got interested in thinking about colleges and as a junior in high school.
Do you remember the first letters that you got from colleges for you to come play basketball for them?
You know, you would start, and it's completely different than what it is now. But you would start. I'd get 4 or 5 letters, you know, a week, a day, and all these are smaller schools, Division III, NAIA schools. You know, so it was more of a mail campaign than anything. And I can remember taking some visits around to some of the smaller Illinois colleges. But, you know, today, in today's market, you almost have to market yourself. And the thing that's becoming apparent is I didn't realize there's that many colleges out there. But there are a ton of small schools out there that are looking for the student athlete to come and play for them.
And tell us, and we all know that you went to Indiana State University, but tell us what was the closest possible school that you may have worn their uniform rather than be a Sycamore.
You know, I think Northern Iowa showed some interest. I went out there to a camp I think Northern Iowa, Wabash College. I think I took a visit in Indiana to Wabash College, Millikan University in Illinois. Those are the ones that kind of stand out as far as showed some interest.
Can you tell us the recruiting process, and when did you first meet Coach Green, or was it an assistant that came to watch your games? Or tell us a little bit about the recruiting process to Indiana State University.
It started out, I believe it was Al Perry that would come over and, he wanted to see a workout. So, put on a workout for him. And, it was just over time. It was probably a period of 6 months or so that, they expressed some interest. We talked back and forth. It wasn't a hard sell from my standpoint. I think they invited me over for a couple games. I remember seeing John Sherman Williams play. I think he was a senior when I was a senior in high school. And Rick Fields, I think, was still playing. And so, I'd say my senior year I got interested. They got interested in me, and I went over a few times and watched the Sycamores. And as I said, that was my number one college that I wanted to go to.
John Sherman Williams used to work for me a little bit in Indianapolis after I came out of Indiana State University, and what an amazing ball player! I loved watching him play the game.
Yep. No, he was a spectacular athlete, great basketball player, good person, and it just seemed like that was a good fit to kind of, at that time Indiana State was trying to turn the corner and kind of come up through the MVC, so it was kind of an opportunity to be on a train that was going in the right direction.
Once you got to Indiana State University, were you a little nervous? Were you a little apprehensive? Did you start working out as soon as you got to campus?
Yeah, so small town kid. Never really been off the farm very much, coming to Terre Haute, I'd been there shopping and we would take trips, but, not playing at AAU, not being exposed to that level of athletes coming on campus. So, yeah, we started working out right away, and high school back in the 80s, the weight room wasn't a big priority. In fact, I can't remember really working out that much in high school in the weight room. But as soon as we got to Indiana State, that became part of the program. In the summers, we would have summer jobs and stay there and work out and work on our games. But yeah, it was a little intimidating. I tell a lot of my friends, I think it was the summer between, before the dorms opened up, was living with Olufemi Akinola, Richie Adderley, and I think maybe this was my sophomore year, but Timmy Alakajaw. So here's a kid from Paris, Illinois, living with two Africans and a Bahamian, and it was, and they're great friends, great people. Learned a lot about their culture and just lifelong friends. But it was a big change for me going to college.
Now, was it also a big change? It really didn't affect me much, but the stench of Terre Haute?
Well, yeah, growing up so close to Terre Haute, that was always kind of in the background. So, as you know, Cromwell, sometimes you had to shut the windows. I think that was pre-air conditioning. But so it might be 100 degrees outside, but you had the window shut because of that odor. I think, didn't they make a song about that with "Ooh That Smell" or something like that around that time?
And for people, it's Terre Haute just doesn't stink. It's just, I think, the world capital of railroad ties being made, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there was a. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I think there was some kind of railroad creosote plant there that gave that odor off.
Yeah, and then the other biggest thing on campus was if you were going to the mall, was it Honey Creek or Honey Crick?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So growing up in Paris, we would go to Honey Creek, a few times a year. But yeah, it was good.
Did you know what you were going to get into with Coach Green? Had you met him before you actually got to campus, or what was your kind of expectations before you met him, or after you met him?
You don't really, as an 18-year-old kid, you don't really think through the situation you're getting into. So, I like Coach Green. He was a big guy that was somewhat intimidating. As a player, you probably had more interaction with the assistant coaches. Mark Atherton, Al Perry were a couple of the guys that stood out. That were, they were in the weight room with you. They were in the conditioning, the workout part of it. The day-to-day, going to classes, going to study tables. They were more in the trenches, so you developed a relationship with them. But Coach Green was, I was thankful for the opportunity that he gave me, and I think I played 3 years for him, and then Tate Slott came in, which that's a whole different dynamic that as an 18-year-old you don't really think or anticipate how it's gonna play out.
And you also, Eddie Bird was on your team also, so I'm assuming you have some pretty good stories from Eddie, or was he a pretty quiet guy?
Eddie is a friend of mine. In fact, he was the best man at my wedding. But he and I came over at the same time. I believe he was redshirted his first year. So my sophomore year, Eddie and I had played together. We lived together off and on for those 4 years. And I've got a lot of stories. But Eddie's a great guy, great basketball player, and he's doing real well. I think he's in Terre Haute still and doing pretty good.
I mean, it has to be really hard to be a younger sibling of, arguably one of the top 5 or even more basketball players, in the world in the history of the game. So, did that play on him a lot, or did you ever see that kind of bother him, or is it Eddie Bird was his own guy?
I really think Eddie was his own guy. He knew stepping into Indiana State that there would be the comparisons, and you're not going to fill Larry's shoes. But I think Eddie just kind of took it in stride. Larry would come over and play some with us in the summer, so that was a thrill, being around. A guy that you idolize. I will tell you a story. We were at the Boston Connection at the pool one day, and Eddie and I are sitting there, and Larry's at the pool, and he asked Eddie to go get him a can of chew, and gave him, I don't know, $5 or so, and so Eddie and I went to the gas station to get a chewing tobacco and brought it back, gave it to Larry, and the first thing he asked was, "Hey, you got my change from Eddie?" So I thought that was pretty funny.
What was it like a meeting or shooting around or chatting or talking? Were you nervous with Larry, or was it very often that he would show up to practice, or was he an ambassador to Indiana State still at that same time while playing with the Celtics?
He was on his final stages in his career. He had some injuries and things, but no, he would show up every once in a while at the Boston Connection, and then I can remember one time playing in a pickup game with him, and it was just amazing. Here's a guy 6'9", and playing with college athletes. We were all playing as hard as we possibly could to kind of try to make an impression on him, and you could tell he was in maybe third gear and outplaying every one of us. He came away with a scratch on his neck, I can remember, because we were all going at it, wanting to show him how hard we were going to play, and it just came it was amazing how easy and natural it came to him. And Eddie had a lot of the same Eddie's not 6'9", but he had some of the same instincts that Larry had. Larry was always 2 or 3 steps ahead of us, and this isn't a pickup game. It was day and night the difference between your regular college athlete at mid-level college versus an all-world pro.
Ron, tell us a little bit about your first year. Was it what you thought it was going to be? Were you nervous? Do you remember the first game that you played? Tell us a little bit about your freshman year.
Yeah, it went fairly well. I can remember, part of the challenge during my tenure at Indiana State was, every year there was a new team that was put in place through either, people would leave and grades. But the freshman year coming in, I can remember one of the highlights was we were taking a trip to Hawaii. I had never been west of the Mississippi River. And here's a kid from Paris, Illinois that was going to go to Hawaii for the first tournament. I think it was a Christmas holiday tournament. But, I had some pretty good games, started probably half my time. And, I can't remember exactly what the win-loss record was. But it was kind of what I thought. I mean, as a freshman, you're coming in, trying to fit in, trying to adjust to the difference in athletic ability than what you're used to playing, and can remember very positive time my freshman year of college.
And was your first game? Did you step back and take it in? Is it kind of a blur today? Do you remember running being announced in the starting lineup? I mean, do you remember that clearly, or is it just a blur today?
That's kind of a blur. I mean, that was my goal, was to get to Division I college and to play the game I loved. And once you get there, then you have to kind of set your sights on, well, maybe it's now I want to start. But yeah, I don't remember the lineup, the starting. I can remember some of the press clippings that was in the newspapers and things like that, pictures, and I think my mom may have kept all those. So, looking back at those, it kind of refreshes the memory of, playing Fresno State in Hawaii, and some of the, we had a trip to San Francisco one year. But that was a big deal back then. And some of the trips, every year we tried to have a trip to go somewhere to kind of see parts of the United States.
And how did you enjoy playing on the floor at the Hallman Center, or because at that time I still think it was that rubbery substance, but did you enjoy it? Was that a hurt on your body? Did you enjoy it? Did you wish that it would have been wood?
Oh yeah, there's a huge difference in the wood and that tarpon rubber floor. It was really bad, and hated playing on that floor. I think it may have been my senior year that we got a wooden floor. It's a day and night difference. My sophomore year at Indiana State, just before the season started, I went back to Paris and was playing a pickup game with some of the guys in Ernie Evelyn Gym, and came down my knee and it locked up on me. So went back to practice at Indiana State, and this was probably September or so, October, August, sometime in the fall, and couldn't hardly walk, and I had torn a meniscus in my knee right at the beginning of my sophomore year, and the decision was made to kind of gut it out and try to play through the season. So then I had arthroscopic surgery after the season. But whether that came from the floor or not, I don't know. But it wasn't a joy to play, I can tell you that.
So you actually probably enjoyed more of going to other teams in the conference to play, just because it was just a better flooring.
Part of it, but there's no comparison to the fans and the confines of your own home. I mean, the facility was good. The floor was less than par, but you've still got your fans, and being home was still a special place at Holman Center.
And go ahead.
And probably the best memory of Holman Center is you come in a back door and you've got the person opening the door. You'd see him every day at practice, and the facilities managers. It was pretty neat to have a relationship with them, and they got you into whether it's concerts or other things that you need to get into. They could always get you into it.
Man, there was a concert there. Which one was Winger, Poison, and Cinderella? Was that?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember Poison. Yeah.
I couldn't believe I was going to the Holman Center to see an actual rock and roll concert.
Yeah.
Ron, were your expectations at Indiana State? Did you feel like you guys had a better team than you did? Did you feel kind of disappointed at times while you were at Indiana State, and how did you kind of get over that?
You coming in, you're in high school, you're on a winning team, and then coming into a program that's going through some changes and trying to find its identity, it was a lot to learn and a lot to process. And maybe halfway through your college career, you start realizing that you're not going to play basketball the rest of your life, and you start focusing on the academics and degrees and things like that. But I will tell you, we had four years, and they were all somewhat difficult years. As I mentioned, each year was a new team, and you had to get used to the chemistry, and you had a coaching change, in the fourth year of my career there at Indiana State, and those were all things that you had to deal with. So when I look back at that, it was 4 years of struggle from a basketball standpoint, but there was a lot of good that came out. If you look at those kids that went through that program, I can say Travis Inman, Greg Thomas, Deion Campbell, Femi Akinola, some of those, Rob Vickers, that went through that struggle, all of them are successful today in their careers after basketball. So, that whole mental game of every day bringing your best, even though you're losing more games than you're winning, preparing for practice, getting through the struggles. I mean, I can remember coming home one night from a game, I think it was Drake or somewhere. We get in from Indianapolis to Terre Haute about 10 o'clock at night. Maybe it was 11 o'clock at night. And Coach Green was pretty upset. We had practice right there on the floor in the auxiliary gym till about 1 o'clock in the morning. So, things like that, the struggle, while it wasn't pleasant to go through, I really believe in my heart of hearts that it's caused positiveness in a lot of the players that went through that.
Well said. Very well said. So what was the coaching change like? What does a basketball player go through, or his mindset, when there is a coaching change, and you're getting the coach that's leaving is a well-known from Indiana and all of that, but also too you have a well-known coach that's coming in to coach you for your final season. How do you guys get through that, and how easy was it?
Well, trying to change the culture, which is what Coach Locke was trying to do. One, it takes time. It takes the right players. It takes attitude, a lot of work, and it wasn't going to happen, overnight. So, you've got a new sheriff in town, new rules, new coaches, new assistant coaches, new people to get relationships with. You've got several kids that are coming in. And, Greg Thomas is a good friend of mine. He was a freshman. I was a senior. You're mentoring those kids. You form new relationships with them. The team is still the team. And, that gel, that bond is there. And, so there's a mix of older, maybe kids from the previous administration, and then the new, his recruits, the new coaches' recruits that's come in, and blending that whole chemistry As a senior, I was going into my senior year. My job was to try to create that chemistry and blend that as much as I could, and knowing full well that this new coach wants to get his players in, even though we're all his players. But he wants to build for the future. So I can remember the first few games, I didn't get hardly any playing time because some of the Tates's players that he had recruited were brought in and playing. Now, after 4 or 5 games, I was given a chance to kind of get into the lineup and did okay. So it was a lot of change.
Ron, I have a story, and I probably should have told you this story before we got on air, but my story is that for some reason, somehow, on the 10th floor at Cromwell, we had our windows out of the, our screens out of the windows for some dumb reason, and I dropped a cassette out the window. And it was probably 5 minutes later, there's a knock on Michael and our door, and I open it up, and Larry Bush is standing in the doorway. And Larry Bush is saying, "Did you throw a cassette tape at me?" And I just remember looking at Michael and going, "No, sir. No, we did not. No, sir." Yeah. And, he's like, "All right." He kind of pulled the door, kind of like Shaq in Blue Chips, kind of pulled the door back shut, and I think I had to go change my pants. But was Larry Bush? Yeah. He was with you for a couple of years, also, right?
Yeah, Larry Bush. I think he was out of East Side Chicago, and Darian Applewhite and Chris Harris. They were all. I think we all came in at about the same time as a freshman, and here's a kid from Paris, Illinois, and I think Chris. And I think they were all from the Chicago area. One of my fond memories, I think it was between my sophomore, maybe it's freshman and sophomore year, but we would have summer jobs, and I think I was the only kid that had a car. My job was to go around, pick up Larry Bush and Jerome Stainback, and we took them out to Max Gibson's farm, and we would mow and weed eat, and here you got some inner city kids from Chicago that had never done that. But we had a lot of fun out there. It was hard work, but you kind of bonded as a team, and they got to know me. I got to know them. And Larry was a beast of a man. He was about 6'8" and probably, 260, 270, and he was a beast.
I guess I'm lucky to be alive.
Yeah, you are.
Ron,
he was kind of a gentle giant. He would come across pretty aggressive, but he's a pretty good dude.
Ron, in all the interviews that I've done, I don't have this question just popped in my head, and I have never asked this question, but what kind of advantage do you think you guys got with the ladies for over us people who are just students?
I have no idea. It was a, basketball was somewhat of a struggle for the 4 years. And, people will say, oh, the poor college athlete, they've got it's kind of a job and you've got studies and this and that. But there are a lot of perks to being a college athlete. And the interaction with the female population was one of the positives. So it was, your name's kind of out in front, whether you're a baseball, football, basketball player, but it definitely gave an advantage in that contest.
Did you know was your major the same when you got there as a freshman, and did you graduate in the same major? And what was did you think possibly maybe professional basketball, but I want to major in this so that I have good footing when I do graduate?
By the time my senior year rolled around, I was, I don't want to say burned out on basketball, but when you go through the 4 years that or the 3 years that we had went through at Indiana State, it kind of soured the taste. I really didn't want to play. It's kind of hard to say, but been there, done that. It got out of my system, so to speak. So, probably my junior year started focusing on more of what's the life going to look like after basketball. And throughout college, each summer, I really didn't like the school aspect of it. So when summer rolled around, I did not want to be in a class. I wanted a break. So I would get jobs. One summer I was working for Max Gibson, kind of doing farm work, which I was familiar with from growing up on a farm. But one summer I worked at Old National Bank. I wanted to get a flavor for banking, see if that was a career I wanted to do. I did an internship with Forrest Shear one summer in the insurance producer aspect, and then throughout school worked at the Boys Club right across from Cromwell. So I needed a break from the academics. That wasn't something I really enjoyed. So, but it did give me a taste of what I wanted to do after college, and always liked stocks, bonds, investments. So my major was finance, and got a business administration major. And then probably my sophomore, junior year, Dr. Coleman was starting an insurance degree, and he went out to the athletes and different folks and said, here's a new degree, you should consider it. So I got a minor in insurance, and that coupled with an internship at Forrest Shear, that's what I wanted to do after college, was going to the insurance profession.
And what have you been doing since graduating from Indiana State? Tell us a little bit about your boys and your wife.
Well, I've got 5 kids. I've got 3 in college, 3 daughters that are in college right now. I've got my oldest daughter she's in her 3rd year of vet school at Purdue. I've got my next daughter is a senior at Ball State. She'll be graduating with an exercise science degree. And then my 3rd daughter is in her 2nd year at the United States Coast Guard Academy in Connecticut. And then I've got twin sons that are freshmen at Martinsville High School. So, the last 10 years has kind of been just running kids, watching a lot of athletics, which is a blast. Love it.
So you got a basketball team full of kids, but going into your 2 boys being in Martinsville, what's that like?
It's good and bad. I mean, it's all good, but when Dad played college, and you try not to put any pressure or expectations on them. I coached all my kids from maybe 1st grade through 4th or 5th grade, and enjoyed that. Spent a lot of time with them, and enjoyed it very much. But I think there comes a point where you've got to step back and let someone else coach them and someone else mentor them, and you're kind of along for the ride. It's not, it's all about their what's going to benefit them the most. And a lot of times, as a parent, you need to just back away from the situation and let the coaches coach. And I kind of got my fill coaching them, when they were smaller and younger, and enjoyed that tremendously. But now I enjoy watching them and seeing them develop.
We ran a little long, and we appreciate your time, but I would be probably get in trouble for some people for not asking about I call it the debacle between Wichita State and Indiana State University, and I hope you don't mind me asking, but do you have any memories from that evening? Oh
yeah. So, I keep reliving that in my mind over and over again. No, I'm just kidding, but it was, Darren Lyles got into an altercation with Sasha Radudovic, and Wichita State was the big bully in the Missouri Valley at that time, and I think they were ranked nationally, and Sasha was a big boy that tended to kind of throw his weight around. I think Darren had enough, and so he took a swing at him, and I think I was on the floor at the time, and of course the benches everyone came off the bench. So anyway, Darren got thrown out, and we were playing with 4 guys. It was myself and Jimmy Holiday, and I can't remember who else. But one of my memories is, we hung in there for a while. 4-on-5 is Jimmy Holiday would come down, pull a three, made it, went and ran back down the floor and showed the number one sign, and it was the fans were going wild, and it was a lot of fun going through that debacle. It was definitely a memory making situation.
And what was the mood in the locker room post game?
I can kind of remember Coach Green kind of chuckling. I think he kind of thought it was, I don't want to say funny, but it wasn't we didn't get blasted for it, I can tell you that. I think it was, it was a bully that was bullying that someone stood up to the bully. So I think in a weird way, Coach Green may have been kind of proud of us for doing it.
So was he giving the business to Lyles all night, and Lyles just had enough and he couldn't take it anymore?
I think it'd probably be in a couple years coming. I don't remember if Sasha was a senior or junior, but as I mentioned, they were kind of the dominant in the Missouri Valley at that time, and Sasha was a big boy that was really physical. So I think Darren just had enough of it over either the game or the last couple of years.
Do you head back to Indiana State to watch any basketball, or even back to Paris, Illinois to watch any high school basketball?
I'm actually going to Indiana State, Ball State this weekend. I'll probably get to one or two games a year. It's been a long time since I've been to the Paris game. They had an event a few years ago. I think it was the top 25 players that had ever played at Paris, and that was the last time I went back to a Paris basketball game in Ernie Evelyn Gym. But with the kids, in the last 10 years, it's just been run, and usually squeeze in one or two from Indiana State per year.
And tell us a little bit, you named the gym. Tell us a little bit who it was named after and why it was named after him.
Well, Ernie Evelyn gym in Paris, Illinois, to this day is probably one of the best gyms I've ever played in. It was built in the 1940s, and I think Ernie Evelyn was the coach at Paris that had won the state championship in the 40s. But that, Paris has since got a new school, new gym. I'm not sure what the old gym is used for, but it was a great place to play basketball. The floor kind of set down. There's several gyms like that in Indiana today. There weren't gyms like that in Illinois, and it was a great place to play. The gym was packed every night we played. Fans, the student section, ecstatic, and it was just a great environment to be a part of.
That you said that you were going to go to the Ball State Indiana State game coming up here. That was one of the better games that I went to and attended when at Indiana State when you guys beat Ball State.
Yeah, that was one of the wins that I can still remember, and that was a big win. Yeah.
And Ron, what did Mike and I thought the slogan "If you can't beat 'em, cheat 'em" was great, but what did you feel like when you came out on the basketball court and saw some of those signs around?
It was interesting because I think it was the fraternity day or something, and each fraternity was in charge of making a sign and hanging it in the Holman Center. And I actually went and got that sign and kept it for several years after that game. I thought it was pretty cool. I was trying to get the students involved, and but yeah, I enjoyed it very much.
Well, Ron, it's been fabulous. I also want to thank you for kind of, not, being what I said at the beginning. It was nice meeting you, and you would say hi to me on campus during my 4 years. So I appreciate that. But also, too, I appreciate you spending some time with us to help keep the nostalgia alive and talk about your Paris days and your Indiana State University Sycamore days. And I wish your family best of luck, especially your two boys on the upcoming basketball season.
Billy, thanks for the opportunity. I enjoyed it, and good luck to you too.